going to talk about this particular story, and we're talking about plot. So again, everybody have your notes on plot open. You should all take out your notes on plot that you have in your notebook and have it open. That's why we take the notes. We don't just take them to write them down and then forget about it. We take them so that we can use them to help us when we're talking about that. Okay? So take out your notes on plot, and then you have this worksheet where we are going to map out the parts of plot of this particular story. Okay? So, okay, Kaylin, this is what we're doing right now. Thank you. Okay? All right. I have to turn on this. I'm going to have to switch the computer. Okay, so tell me, what is an exposition? In your definition, what is an exposition? In your notes that we took on plot, tell me what an exposition is. Okay, an exposition, we get introduced to, we find out what the setting is, we get introduced to the characters. What else?
Set story in motion.
Okay, there is an event that happens. What do we call that event that sets the story in motion? What do we call the event that sets the story in motion? No. This happens in the exposition, and JT just said it's an event that sets the story in motion. What do we call that? Yeah, Ariam just said it. We call that the inciting incident. So when we're looking at exposition, we're looking for the setting, the characters, and the basic situation, and the event that sets the story in motion. So what would you say are, what would you say would be the exposition in this story? What parts of this story are the exposition? JT?
The characters, Herbert, Mr. and Mrs. White, and
Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. White. I'm going to make this font smaller, I think. Herbert, the son, and who else? Who's the mysterious man? Sergeant Major Morris.
Sim.
Rip Herbert, 2020.
Okay. So those are our characters. What else is part of the exposition? What? What, Lucas?
What?
The setting.
The setting. So what is the setting of this particular story?
The house.
England.
The White's home. Can I extend that? Okay, when is it? Do we know?
No. I mean, there were machines.
Early 20th century, we can kind of guess that from Whoops.
Early 23rd century.
I can extend this, can I?
Just bring it down. Machines.
Early 20th century.
Isn't
And
early
what?
like-
What?
Isn't early 20th century like 1920?
Yeah, it's the 1900s.
Yeah, so it's the early 1900s. So what then is the basic situation? Do you think? Because the exposition includes the basic situation, kind of the background. So what's the basic situation? How do we figure out, what do we figure out is going on? What, Ariam?
Magic.
Okay, but how do we learn about the magic?
Dude.
Sergeant Major Morris tells what? The story of?
The tail monkey's paw.
Okay, Sergeant Major Morris tells the tale of the monkey's paw.
The rabbit's foot.
Monkey paw.
Has a 10% drop rate for rabbits. Pretty good.
I think we should talk
A lot of rabbit's foots.
All right, so those are all parts of the exposition. Those are all parts of the exposition. We are filling this in Ella, and then if you go in the hall.
I don't feel like I can just
All right, so that's our exposition. Yeah, that's fine. Is there anything else you would add? All right. So we are going to move now to the rising action. Now,
Oh yeah, and get a
Instantly win.
Yeah.
now, guys, what is rising action in a story? What's the definition? Leah?
Main part of the story, so things happen, bad things happen, or usually bad things happen.
Yeah, so this is the main part of the story. You notice this is the biggest box on that sheet, right? Because this is where most of the events happen, okay? Everything that's between the exposition and the climax of the story happens in this box. So we would want to talk about kind of, and Leah said bad things happen, so complications happen, right? We call those complications. They are things that complicate the goal, right? Or the problem, the conflict. They complicate the conflict. They make it harder. Okay. So, what are some things in the story? Well, let's think about the climax first. What do you think is the most intense part of the story? The climax is the most intense part of the story. What do you think is the part where things are going to go this way or that way? Okay, the turning point in the story. Ariam?
When this is kind of long, I don't know, but when like the dude he was like wishing, and then the next day like you're so dead.
The next day they're like, what?
I think it was just compensation.
Compensation? Well, what's where things are going to either go back to the way they were or not?
Like when he wished for his son,
To what?
be back alive.
Be back alive. And then he has to make a decision, right? So he's wished for his son to come alive, and his son is coming, and at this point he has to make a decision to either
Kill his son?
have his son still be dead or his son come back to life, right?
Maybe
So that is the point where either things are going to change or things are going to remain the same. So the part where, so we're going to say the climax is where Mr. White has to make that it's way at the end, right? Where Mr. White has to make that decision whether to keep his son dead or have his son be alive, mangled. Okay? And what's at the door? What's at the door? What's going to come in? Is his son going to live or is he going to die? So we're going to go to the climax instead. First, we're going to fill this in.
If Elvis is first wish, wouldn't his son still be alive?
No, they just take away the money they gave him, and his son would be dead, and his son would be dead for no reason.
What a dude.
Huh? What do you?
Wouldn't you wish for like potentially more
That's
power?
being struck.
Because he said make something sensible.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like the worse, the more extravagant wish you have, the worse it's going to bite you back.
Or what?
If it's someone that has door and he wasn't dead again, would there just be a dead body afterwards?
No, because he's alive. No. Because he maybe didn't wish for his son to die. He maybe wished for things to go back to the way they were before he was alive.
But would his son still be dead?
Yeah.
Why did he really want his son to be alive and not mangled?
And at that point, when she's trying to reach for the latch, we're kind of wondering or choosing, or trying to see, waiting to see if she's going to get the latch before he makes that final wish, if she's going to get the door open, or if he's going to get the wish made before she opens it. So that's really the most intense part of the story.
What if he isn't dead?
Okay?
Accident.
Now, the rising action, so now we're going to go backwards to the rising action. The rising action are all of those events that lead up to that decision that Mr. White has to make. Okay? So, that is so you notice again that the climax is kind of at the end of the story. So this is a good way to see that the rising action is the biggest part of the story, and that all the events, most of the events in the story are rising action. Okay? So name some things that would be rising action. Try to start from the beginning, where Sergeant
The guy
Sergeant Major Morris tells the story,
But that's in the exposition.
right?
Oh, third guy
So
was for
since that point until Mr. White has to make the decision, what are some major events?
He throws the monkeys on the fire.
Okay?
Their son dies.
You die.
Their son has an accident.
Okay, let's wait on their son dies and has an accident until we get a few more things in there. Because yes, that will be part of the rising action, but let's try to do them in order as much as we can. They don't have to be perfectly in order, but as much as we can. Okay, what else happens? He throws the paw in the fire, then what happens?
They make a wish.
Okay, first they have to get it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. White retrieves it from the fire. Okay, then they wish, Mr. White wishes for 200 pounds.
Is that like money?
Yes, Brayden. It's,
Hello, Brayden. 200 pounds in loaded air.
Okay,
His wife was a little overweight.
what happens when he wishes for the 200 pounds?
I think all the what's it called moves.
What?
The paw twists his hand.
Paw twists in his hand. Okay, then what happens? What major happens?
His son dies.
Okay, so, yes, his son does die. So, let's just say also the how do they find out that their son dies? What?
Dude.
Yeah, a stranger shows up and tells him of Herbert's death. What do they get then?
Compensation.
Yeah, they receive the compensation. That's pretty major, right?
Yeah.
What happens after they find out their son is dead?
They hold hands.
Okay, is that a major event? Probably not. Is it important to I mean,
him to come alive.
it's a detail, but is it like something that really affects the plot? No, so we're not going to include that, but I'm glad you said that. Okay,
And they bury him.
they bury him.
What if they bury him? I thought, they buried him.
Okay,
They buried him.
Mrs. White is distraught, and what does she remember? Mrs. White remembers they have a wish left on the monkey's paw.
Bro, I keep going white instead of H. Come on, let's go.
So what do they do next? Mr. White wishes his son alive.
Because I got no room.
And what happens after he wishes his son alive again?
Knocking.
They hear knocking at the door.
We need the book for just enough.
All right, and then we are at the, whoops.
Not done.
I'm sorry, I'm bringing it down. I thought I was bringing it down.
We're gonna need it later. Don't worry, it's our class.
Okay,
I can't see nothing.
they need me? What?
We need the book. Well, I can't read anything actually.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so now we're at the climax part, right? And I'm going to assign for homework for you guys to fill in the rest of this plot diagram. So you're filling in falling action and resolution. Okay? Using events from the story, fill in what you think the falling action and the resolution is. Okay? That is homework for tomorrow, is to complete this chart. You guys still need that up for a little bit?
Isn't it end right there?
Can you scroll it down? Because there's stuff on the bottom.
Scroll down.
Oh, I did it over here. Oh. Why? Okay, whatever.
We're done with
Is that good? All right, if you're finished writing, put it away for now. Your homework is to complete this plot diagram.
Why was so like all their wishes? It took like a few hours, except the last one. When you said I want Herbert to die.
Yeah. I don't know, I guess it's a story. That's true.
We have Spanish. Hopefully we can go outside.
Okay, put that away. Homework is to complete the plot diagram. Okay, I'm gonna stop this